Ladies and gentlemen, here we are again, for another distinguished gentleman's ride. And how was this year? Well, here's a little summary.
Não percebi.
Estás a perder líquido.
Está?
Vê daquele lado. Vê daquele lado.
As you saw, some things went right, and others went wrong. Or am I exaggerating? And that's what you have to find out over the next few minutes. Welcome to Racer TV. So, let's start with the weather. Yes, the sky seemed a little confusing. And no, this thunder sound is fake. Although it rained a little where I live, fortunately, the weather in the city of Oporto was always perfect. And here are my ride companions. Obviously, I have to highlight this one. Although it's not exactly a CafeRacer, I think it is an interesting project. Mainly the color scheme set up with some John Player special flavor. It is a Kawasaki GPZ 750 from the 80s. The most curious thing, at this point, this bike only had 88 kilometers on it. And so the owner thought it would be a good idea to borrow it to Gustavo for this ride. From what I saw, he enjoyed every minute of it. For the first time in all previous DGRs, we arrived before the scheduled start time. And to my surprise, a lot of people were already there. But even so, I managed to park Frankenstein in the shade of a tree. The engine sound you hear is surely from a two-stroke small motorcycle. Without a doubt, the type of motorcycle most loved by all environmentalists. And several minutes later, I'm sure everyone was satisfied with the calm and serene atmosphere. As usual, I like filming the arrival of the machines. But unfortunately, this year things didn't go the way I wanted. Too many people passing in front of my camera. After a few minutes, it got even worse. I was almost run over in one of these situations. And when I moved to a quieter place, the bikes passed by too quickly. For that reason, I decided to invest more of my time in the photography mode. Therefore, allow me to start with the classic department. The majority were very well restored. Mainly small displacement motorcycles, which we call motorizadas. And I must say that in recent years, I have seen an increase in the participation of these small motorcycles, also including some very interesting vintage helmets. Yes, this is the new AGV, but from the 70s. Speaking of helmets, here is a bike that doesn't need them. Probably the only motorcycle in the world that does not require the use of a helmet. But on the other hand, the driver has to use these 2 seat belts. Otherwise, the bike won't move. Speaking of not moving, remember this hilarious scene from the movie Mr. Bean's Holiday? Here it is, a bicycle with an auxiliary engine Solex from the early 60s. Interestingly, it seems to be the same model used in the film. But this one is already prepared not to give anyone a lift. Remember last year when I said that Vespas seem to have an attraction to each other? Here is more proof of that. And this year, they were still entitled to an exclusive parking space. As always, many ladies came in their own machines, and some of them were brave enough to wear high heels. I also saw loads of Royal Enfields, many Triumphs, and strangely, only a few custom bikes. But even stranger, Frankenstein was the only Honda CX at the event. And now, I have to highlight the presence of a beautiful surprise. It immediately caught my attention when it arrived. And later, I spoke to Tiago about this Yamaha. It is beautiful, isn't it? This is the new Yamaha XSR 900 GP, clearly inspired by the 1980s YZR 500. It is not only a very beautiful bike, but also very well thought out. Surprisingly, this rear section is removable. And underneath there is a seat, practically identical to the conventional XSR. The rear foot pegs are very well concealed here. But if you think this paint scheme is too flashy, there is also a grey and black version. And this unit had also a lower fairing, which I think is optional. Either way, and no matter what color, any of these two would be an excellent choice. As usual, there were bikes for all tastes, and from most brands. And while I was still looking for more, it was time to start the engines. Unlike recent years, this time, the ride began slowly. And a few meters later, we all discovered why. For some reason, the lawn irrigation system was turned on in this section of the avenue. And for obvious reasons, everyone slowed down at this point. But it was not just that. Last year, there were around 400 bikes. And this year, almost 700. Which means the ride would be slower in some places. And it really was. I think during the entire ride, I only used first and second gear, But fortunately, being slow also has some advantages. And thanks to that, I got 2 souvenir photographs. Another reason that made this ride slower is the construction work on a new subway line. Although here, the subway is above ground, and all of this forces us to take a detour from the usual route. Later, I stopped to film all the bikes passing by. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out good. I should have filmed in a slower spot. A few meters later, someone asks me a curious question.
Não.
Ele é mesmo assim, a moto é que é construída.
Foi alterada.
Foi alterada, mas está muito bonito.
Obrigado, obrigado.
Obviously, not a follower of this channel. But it is very common to ask me if Frankenstein is a new motorcycle or a modified classic. And then a few moments later, things start to go wrong. Lots of bikes, lots of heat, and a lot of time in stop and go mode. And so the inevitable happens.
Estás a perder líquido.
Não percebi.
Estás a perder líquido.
Está?
Está a ver daquele lado. Vê daquele lado.
Oh, caralho. Obrigado, obrigado.
Not only was it losing water, but also water vapor, which means the engine was too hot, and also that the electric cooling fan was not working. A few meters ahead, I turned off the engine, and I managed to keep it off until I reached the destination. From what I've been told, this year several bikes had heating problems. When I finally stopped, I saw that there was still water in the auxiliary reservoir, which means it wasn't too bad. Meanwhile, it was time to look for more interesting machines. And as usual, I found some. It is curious how some of these bikes escaped my sight at the meeting point. But considering the presence of almost 700 bikes, I think it's understandable. I have to congratulate Ton Up Garage and the organization for making this DGR possible. As always, they made a good job. After this moment, some people returned to the meeting point, and others returned home. And so I decided to end the ride early, but not without first adding water to Frankenstein's radiator. Just half a liter of water was enough to fill the entire circuit. And so ends another DGR, with a well-deserved selfie for posterity. In reality, it didn't exactly end here, because on the return trip, we still had some very interesting moments. Thank you for watching Racer TV. And as always, I hope to see you on the next video.